Hello and welcome to our Meet the Analyst series here at Bell Direct. I'm Grady Wulff, Market Analyst with Bell Direct, and a familiar face here today, John Hester, one of our senior healthcare analysts at Bell Potter. And no better time to talk to John than right now about all things healthcare and obviously the Trump tariffs we're seeing come out in the next few weeks we're expecting in the healthcare space. So I thought we'd start with the healthcare tariffs we're expecting. What are you expecting on the front of the companies that you're covering?
Yeah, so there's a few of them manufacture in Australia, and obviously the tariff gets levied on the transfer price into the US. Yep. So there will be there will be earnings implications for a select group of companies. So let's run through a few of the names.
Yeah, so Telix, what's the impact there you're expecting?
Yeah, so Telix manufactures a point of care product. It's manufactured in the US just in time for delivery into patients, so no impact whatsoever.
Perfect. Avita.
Avita also manufactures in the US, so nothing for them.
Perfect. Mesoblast.
Mesoblast is a pharmaceutical company. Its product is actually manufactured in Singapore. Mesoblast came out a few weeks ago and said they don't expect an earnings impact because their product is sourced or originated in the US from US donors. So it's a US domiciled product, if you like. Yeah. So they're not expecting a tariff impact, we hope, because the impact there would be, it's an expensive product.
Yeah, and healthcare products are quite expensive in nature anyway.
Yeah, so, but just to be clear, the company does not expect a tariff impact.
Okay, Promedicus.
So Promedicus is a software company. As far as we're aware, there will be no tariff on them at this stage. They're yet to come out and make a statement, but that's the best advice we have at the moment, is that there's no impact on their product specifically.
Yeah, ResMed?
So ResMed are an interesting one. They manufacture in Mexico. They also manufacture here in Western Sydney. You would expect that there would be a tariff levied on the transfer price of the units they export out of Sydney and Mexico into the US. They've also come out and said that they're going to commence manufacturing in the US, I believe. Mm-hmm. Not to be confirmed, yet to be confirmed. So I would expect a modest impact based on the impact of the tariffs on the Australian manufactured product.
Yeah.
But look, we don't cover ResMed, as you know, so that's my best estimate at the moment.
And finally, Nanosonics.
So Nanosonics are a manufacturer. They manufacture here in Sydney as well. Mm-hmm. We've come out and had a close look at that. The impact is between $1 to $2 million annually. That is the absolute value of the tariff we expect to be levied on their product. That is actually around about 5 to 10% of their pre-tax earnings.
Wow.
So they only generate EBIT of around about $20 odd million. So $1 to $2 million doesn't sound like a lot in terms of the top line, but in terms of the overall earnings impact, we think it's material. So we've actually got that product, that name on a sell just at the moment.
Yep, so we'll dive into that shortly. Let's start with Telix.
Sure.
Telix Pharmaceuticals came up with an update recently on their product launch into the US.
Yep.
It wasn't as favourable as the market was expecting. Yep. Can you run us through a broad level of what happened and what you expect the next step to be?
Yep, so the product is Pixclara.
Yep.
It is a product that is going to be indicated for the imaging of gliomas, brain tumours.
Yep.
The FDA issued what they call a complete response letter, which means that the new drug application was not successful and they need to go back to the drawing board and consider how they're going to approach it.
Okay, so what does that mean for what do you think and what are you factoring into the valuation for the next step for this product? Because they do make money already through Illuccix and other drugs in the market. So what's your thoughts?
So next steps are they are going to schedule a meeting with the FDA to talk to them about what is required in order to get this product through registration. So my view has always been that, look, it's a matter of when, not if, this product gets registered. It is a diagnostic. It is very safe. It is approved in multiple other jurisdictions.
Yeah.
So it's somewhat confounding that the FDA would turn around and not approve this, but they have got a history of doing that, i.e. when products are approved in other jurisdictions first, they have been used for decades, cyclopharm being a good point in case, very safe, and they still turn around and gave it a complete response letter, and they come up with reasons that companies need to go away and do a bit more work. And that's exactly what the case is here.
Okay.
I think that what will happen is that they'll come to an agreement with the FDA at this upcoming meeting. Telix will probably be required to submit some additional data. Now, hopefully, that is available to them via data from what they call their expanded access program in the US. So this product, even though it's not through the regulatory process yet, it is available under this special program called expanded access.
Yeah.
And hopefully, there'll be sufficient data to meet whatever the needs are to get through the regulatory process. But in practical terms, it's probably a delay of at least 12 months. And consequently, the stock came off because everyone had to push back their revenue assumptions by that around about that sort of 12-month factor.
Yeah. So for Telix, they have multiple therapy drugs also in the works right now. How close are they to getting a therapy drug to market? Because we know this generates a lot more revenue.
2 candidates in the pipeline. So the first is for the prostate cancer. That one has commenced a phase 3 trial. We're going to get an interim readout on dosage and safety in the middle of this year. So that's not that far away. But we're not going to get an efficacy signal, so the company tells us. So everyone's waiting with bated breath there. There are some pretty significant issues with that drug around toxicity and specifically blood toxicity. Okay. Things like thrombocytopenia and neutropenia and all these sorts of nasty words. So we're looking very carefully at that. So look, all going well. They get a good efficacy signal perhaps towards the end of this year, but look, that's still 2 to 3 years minimum away. Yeah. So it's a long-term one. The other one is in glioblastoma. So we've talked about the imaging candidate. It's the same molecule that they'll use for attaching a therapeutic isotope to this molecule, and it'll be used as a therapy, obviously. So the early data, which was only updated a few weeks ago, was very encouraging, 23 months overall survival versus around 12 to 13 months on the standard of care. So it's meaningful. It's really meaningful. I would expect that that drug candidate would be eligible for accelerated approval subject to these results being confirmed in a larger phase 2 study. I would expect that we will get some more data on that in calendar year 26. So that's quite exciting for the company, and I would think that will be the first to market.
Definitely. So in the similar space, Clarity Pharmaceuticals, we've been quite bullish on that for a while, but the share price has come off quite significantly this year. What do you attribute that to?
Well, going back to November, prior to the US election, the stock was riding high. 7 or 8, even got to just shy of $9. Wow. There were multiple transactions in the space where you'd seen big pharma pay up billions of dollars for early stage assets in the radiopharmaceutical space. So I think that the share price appreciation was largely on the back of that activity in the sector. Come the election, Trump gets elected, we've had this quite significant change in the macro environment, specifically at the FDA, and there's been a lot more uncertainty injected into the whole pharma space. So people want certainty. They want to be able to rely on a known regulatory pathway, and I think that at the moment there's a significant cloud over that regulatory pathway. So we're looking for more certainty to come out of the FDA there. We've just had a new head of the CBER appointed this week. We're waiting to see how the dust settles on that guy, and then we can move forward. So the macro factor has been a big one. The other stuff is probably the market is concerned about the company's balance sheet position. They've got $106 million in cash. That's only around about sort of 70 million, call it US. That provides them with a cash runway through to at least June next year. Okay. Beyond that, the company is probably come a raise. And so whatever data comes out at the moment, people are always looking around the longevity of the balance sheet and the cash supply. So that's unhelpful in this current environment. So those are the two main things. But I want to stress that the clinical data that the company has continued to put out, remains excellent. We're very optimistic about those products, both the imaging and the therapy getting to market. Yeah.
So how long do you think it is until they do get to market?
Well, over the course of the next few months, we've got some key readouts. So we've got the data from the Clarify study, which is in lymph node detection for prostate cancers. The second one is the Amplify study, which is in biochemical recurrence. That is due to commence recruitment at any stage. both those trials are likely to achieve full recruitment by the end of calendar year 25. We'll get a readout in early calendar year 26. And then from there, subject to that data, we're looking at first products on market at some point in calendar year 27, we believe.
Which will be here before we know it.
Which will be here before we know it.
Yeah.
And that will be a very significant market disruptor. You know, I think that I used, in fact, I published a note on Clarity this morning. The term I used was I believe that copper 64 will dominate that market within a few years of coming to market. You know, it's already covered by the gallium products and the fluorine products, Telix and Lantheus respectively. You know, I think that this is a second generation product, the copper that is, and I think it'll be a very significant market disruptor.
It's an exciting time for Clarity.
It's good.
Now onto Avita, another one you cover. Now it's been a tough start with revenues missing your forecast. And so the outlook is, well, they've attributed that to lower hospital purchases. What's your view on resale in the market and the current operations at Avita?
Yeah, so as a matter of fact, it's timely that we're talking about that because they report tonight.
Oh, there we go.
So they report first quarter results tonight. We're looking for around about $21 to $22 million US of revenues for the quarter. That's up from about 18 million in the December quarter. So the miss that you referred to was for the December quarter. And look, you're right, that was attributable to a downturn in sales in the month of December. They weren't the only ones to experience that. Look, we've got it on hold at the moment. There's a bit of nervousness coming into this result. The main issue being the rate of cash burn. Those guys are continuing to burn 8 to 10 million of cash a quarter, and that's significant. They can't sustain that for too much longer, and they need to sort of get the business moving towards a cash neutral position towards the back end of this year. Now, that's what's in their guidance, so and that's what the market will be looking at in this result. So the top line and also the movement towards a lower in cash burn.
So stay tuned for the results out tonight. Let's jump to Mesoblast.
Now,
you are quite bullish on Mesoblast. Following the company's success of hitting commercialization for its Ryoncil, the product in the US targeting steroid-refractory acute graft versus post
Very
disease.
good, Grady.
No, that's written down. Can you give us an update on what that means for the company and what's your outlook and why you're so bullish now?
So just a couple of quick points. Steroid refractory graft versus host disease. This is a downstream effect of a bone marrow transplant. So the kid gets leukemia, chemotherapy, followed by a bone marrow transplant, and a graft versus host is when the body rejects the donor graft, the bone marrow. So deadly in many cases. You know, there's no standard of care in there for children. There's just quite simply no therapy. There is the therapy for adults, but we'll come to that a bit later on. So graft versus host is deadly in you know, certainly in the most severe cases. But it's an ultra orphan indication. There's only around 300 odd children a year in the US who get it. So this product was approved by the FDA in late December, which was great because that means I didn't have to sit around at Christmas time waiting for the approval to come through. The list price is about $1.5 million US for this product.
Wow.
So it's a really big ticket item, but the company is at the moment midstream in terms of going through market access. So getting Medicare to pay for it. It's approved in the majority of states now for Medicare patients, which is about 40% of the market, which is great news. It's got significant penetration with private payers as well. They've had at least 5 patients within months of the approval, which is great. And we'll start to see the cash flows from that come through in the June quarter results. So very excited about the outlook for the next 12 months or so. And then they've got follow-on studies in the adult population due to commence anytime soon. And then their second product in heart disease is also about to commence the second leg of its regulatory process. So plenty to look forward to over the next 12 months there.
Now, I don't know how you keep up across all these companies, but we'll jump to a bigger one now, Promedicus. You've recently updated that and upgraded that to buy.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, so look, Promedicus is, I just had a look before I came down, it's on a PE of 216 times.
That is insane.
With 33% EPS growth in FY25, followed by 35% growth in EPS in FY26. So by FY27, that PE comes down to about 127 times. only 127 times.
Only 127 times price to earnings.
But but the earnings growth has been fantastic over the last 5 or 6 years. It is absolutely the best product in the market, and I'm talking about Visage here for the imaging or viewing of radiographic images.
Yeah.
So it is a market leader in the space. It is used by the vast majority of the leading hospitals in the US. They charge a premium product because it's premium for the product because it is quite simply the best in the market. It is the go-to tool for radiologists.
Do you see any emerging threats? Because I don't know of any competitors in the space that are namely coming up for any market share or anything. What threats do you see?
So Promedicus believe that they've got maybe 8 to 10% of the market at the moment. So it's still quite modest in terms of overall size. So the other players in the market, there are a European group called Sectra out of Scandinavia. Then you've got Philips, GE, Fujifilm, all these sorts of guys who are the legacy products. Now they use compressors and technology. In other words, you want to view a file, a large radiology file. You've got to take that file from the archive, which is probably an offsite archive, send it to the radiologist PC so he can view it. That all takes time. In some cases, a couple of minutes because it's compress and send technology.
Yeah.
Now, Promedicus have refined that process so they can stream the image straight from the archive effectively. So the load time is just vastly reduced, and so the productivity of the radiologists is vastly improved. So it's all about speed.
Yeah.
And that is why it is so popular with hospitals and radiologists, because radiologists are time poor. There's a dramatic shortage of radiologists in the US, and so they're looking to increase productivity out of the teams that they do have. So it's all about speed. There are no competitors doing what Promedicus does, and for that reason they continue to win new business. In fact, earlier today they just announced their latest contract with the University of Iowa, $20 million over 5 years, and the company produces an EBIT margin 76% odd. So the earnings leverage. So 76 cents in every dollar falls to the EBIT line.
What's the average in the industry, do you think? Below 20?
You take a company like IDE, the Integrated Diagnostics down in Victoria. If their EBIT margin was 20%, I'd be surprised.
Yeah.
GE would be something probably less than that.
So you just put it into perspective about how incredible the potential is here.
That's why the company trades on a P of 216 times.
Which is rare.
Which is rare. $26 billion of market capitalisation. And look, it got, the share price got pummeled after the Trump announcements, and it was down at $210.
Yeah.
It's now had a rally to 228. We've got it on a strong buy. I think it's headed back to 300.
Absolutely. And finally, Nanosonics. The final one that you cover, not the final one you cover way more, but I thought we'd get a few names in today. They've been on a run over the last few months, up 50% year to date. Do you attribute that to the Chorus device approval, and what's your outlook for the company?
Yeah, so at the half year, Nanos upgraded their guidance, and that led to the rally in the share price. FY24 was a tough year for them. They were caught in the midst of a disappointing first half. The revenue growth was only around about 8%, and the stock was sold off. And so it really only recovered after they released that first half 25 result, and there was a modest increase in the full year guidance. A lot of that was actually driven off the back of currency rather than anything else. So I was a little surprised that the stock rallied as hard as it did following the first half result. The earnings transparency on this thing is fairly good. But look, for Chorus, since you mentioned it specifically, Chorus is the company's new device, recently approved by the FDA. It is a instrument reprocessing device for endoscopes. And it's designed to minimise the risk of cross-patient transfer of infections after use of an endoscope. So look, it's going to be a long burn for revenues. most of the analysts who cover the stock have got $1 to $2 million of revenue for this product in FY26, and it's going to take several years for it to gain sort of traction. So look, it's always traded on a high PE, and look, for that reason we've got it on a sell at the moment. We're not there on the valuation, and I think it'll be one of those stocks that's going to have quite a long burn to get any substantial revenue growth out of the Chorus device. And the Trophon device is actually quite a mature device now. It's got 60% market penetration. So, I think at $1.2 odd billion worth of market capitalization, it's on a very high PE as well, and I just can't justify that stock at this price of around about $4.70, $4.80.
Yeah, John, your insights are invaluable as always. Thank you so much for joining us today for Meet the Analyst, and I really hope you enjoyed that insight into the healthcare space. We love catching up with John, and we'll do it again soon. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Grady. You're very welcome.